tonight? If you could raise your hand. Not seeing any, so I will close the public comment portion of the hearing. So it's 11:17. We definitely need to ask Derek to speak to the zoning question that Dale Mead raised. Derek, can you do that?
Yes, Madam Chair. Thank you. Yeah, I believe it's the town instituted the ADU ordinance to promote ADUs. They made them much more easy to construct on a site. I think the prohibition against the grandfather clause was a grandfather clause that allowed non-conforming lots to be able to have ADUs if they complied with the bulk requirements. But I don't think it was intended to stop ADUs on non-conforming lots going forward or newly created non-conforming lots. I don't think that was the intent of the ordinance. I think the town wanted to promote them. They've done a lot of work. They've made several amendments to the ordinance to make these less onerous for people to put on their site. So I don't think that was the intent of the ordinance. And I respect Dale's opinion. He's a very smart guy, but I have a different opinion in this case.
Thank you, Mr. Bridger. David Cohen?
So I also, and I don't really know what the answer is to this question, but if some undersized lots are allowed to have ADUs and other undersized lots are not allowed to have ADUs, that seems to me like unequal justice. And I guess it's a question for Jerry as much as anything, is whether that's a proper, something that an ordinance can do, is to, to discriminate between two equal pieces of property and say this one can and this one can't.
It's a very good question. Of course, Derek is the one who's been called upon to make these interpretations and judgments, although the final decision rests always ultimately with the board. But it's an interpretation that it certainly can be subject to challenge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that actually leads to my second question, which is, are we able to grant relief in case it's needed on this issue? In other words, can the board choose to, or because it wasn't noticed, would we not be able to grant that relief?
I don't think it had to be noticed, and I think the board can grant the relief, although it's an open question. But my view is the board can do that.
Okay.
And would it be a good idea for us to do that from a prophylactic viewpoint?
Well, like Derek said, that section that was referenced was put in to allow for existing non-conforming lots to not have to go to the zoning board, essentially. It does not say, and ones made, created after that cannot do it. It affirmatively says those that previously existed don't need to, which it, in discussions with the municipal attorney, it probably doesn't even need to say that, but just to make it clear, so it wouldn't have been challenged that way, that part was added in. So I think it might be a little, while it might be the more, precautionary route, I think it might be unnecessary to do something like that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would not think that it would necessarily follow that if you're grandfathering backward, you would not permit the same condition or this, the same thing going forward. I mean, I think I guess I'm just repeating what you said, but if the intent was not to allow it, then it would have been said, would it not? I mean,
Exactly.
Louise, could I just say two things? One, David
Yeah.
and I were very involved, obviously, with crafting every word of of this ordinance, so I can confirm that that was not our intention.
Mhm.
However, I agree with Derek, Dale is, very smart person. But he's not an attorney, and Dale, if what you raised, was an issue, that can, it obviously was taken up with the planner, and the zoning officer, to Jerry's point, makes the ruling here, and the zoning officers made that ruling. So I don't know why members of the board are continuing to question the zoning officer's ruling. The zoning officer made a ruling. For us then to be engaging in prophylactic actions based on a legal hypothetical by a member of the public does not set a beneficial precedent for the board. It would,
Yeah, point taken.
something that would hijack our hearings on a level that I think is not a direction we want to go into. That said, Dale, to your point, we will look into making sure that that is buttoned down, but I can confirm that that was not the intention.
Mhm. Okay,
And I think we should respect
Derek's reading.
protocol, which
but-
is what it's the appropriate protocol for this setting, so.
Okay, so, would the board, let's at least start the board discussion, here. I think there were a few other things that were raised in public comment that I think are worthy of, the applicant responding to. A number of people referenced the trees along the front of the property, and I know the testimony was that those trees are, very close to the end of their expected lifespans. I'm wondering whether the determination, I guess this is for Mr. Kmielek and also Dan Dobromilski and Dan Weissman, if you were part of this conversation. Was it determined that those trees could not be saved with the driveway located where it is, and that the remaining trees, if a couple were to be removed, would be more vulnerable to toppling over? Is that what I recall your testimony being?
Yes, ma'am.
Anything to add to that, Dan Dobromilski?
No, I think Jim's testimony was accurate. I think it's part of it was that they are very mature trees, and there's always the potential trees of that size could get blown over, especially those types of trees. But it was more that the construction activity that would be occurring with the utilities and the driveway, it was such that they would be very risky at that point. They would be rendered very risky trees, most likely to blow over in large storm or heavy wind. Some of them did have other issues, diseases and such. So in combination, all those factors is such that we just couldn't find a way to even try to preserve one of them in any way that would work. That's what the analysis brought out.
Thank you. And I recall another member of the public questioning whether the required number of replacement trees could be fit on the property. I think I recall seeing earlier in your presentation a rendering that showed where all the full complement of replacement trees would be planted.
Yeah, we
Did that
represented.
image represent the full number of whatever 27, 20? I can't remember what the number of replacement trees was.
Yes, it did. Yes.
Yeah, what we suggested was that, I mean, this is a very sophisticated design, and what it really deserves to have a real landscape plan for the people that are going to live here, and such. And so the thought was rather than just have a formula where it says you have to put 26 trees back. What they need to do is have someone design a landscape for these spaces. And that's why the notes were added to the plan saying that they propose to do that. And that they use that 26 tree count as the starting point of a budget as to what they would be required to do.
Well,
And
I
can I
just want to
just-
say that one of the several things that I find appealing about this plan is that the as of right use of the property, a very, very large home, much larger than others or most others in the neighborhood, could be built without any oversight of tree removal or tree replacement. And with this plan, the tree replacement is required and guaranteed. And so, you know, I'm just throwing that out there. Mr. Cohen.
Yeah, I just, from a technical standpoint, this landscape plan, if I remember, this application is a minor site plan. So a landscape plan is not ordinarily required for a minor site plan, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so yeah, I just wanted to make sure that in this case, we're not, for instance, denying the public an opportunity to review the landscape plan that they would ordinarily have. We're not sort of granting a variance by saying that we're accepting this application without the landscape plan and referring it to the landscape subcommittee. We're just doing what's appropriate for a minor site plan.
Correct.
Yeah, that's correct. And if we do entertain a motion to approve this, a condition certainly would be a visit to the landscape subcommittee and, you know, subject to that review and approval. Mia?
I just wanted to address a couple things that the neighbors said, you know, vis-a-vis the master plan, and I think there was a question about the connection between this application and the master plan, and I think it's important for the public to understand that subdivisions have existed in Princeton. We actually have elevated them to a more formal and more rigorous level of scrutiny by bringing them to the planning board. They used to, for many, many years in Princeton, they just came to a subcommittee of the planning board. It was much easier to get a subdivision in the past. This has nothing to do with the master plan. This is a basic, you know, action under the MLUL that happens in every town in the state of New Jersey, and in the whole country. It has nothing to do with the Princeton master plan. And in fact, Princeton has had ADUs for quite a few decades. The town has not become overrun. The only thing that the Princeton's ADU ordinance did was, as part of our consolidation, to come up with consolidated standards for ADUs that do make them somewhat, do eliminate some of the obstacles, but again, you have to build within the existing permitted FAR. So it is not like you are going to be creating a larger form of the built environment. They previously were known as flats in the former township and secondary dwelling or secondary residences or dwelling residences in the former borough. So, you know, both of these things, subdivisions and ADUs, have existed for a very long time in Princeton, many, many years before the master plan. I do know there is a group and some individuals that have been going around this neighborhood and trying to connect those two and I would say in a very Trumpian fashion to create fear and anxiety among, you know, it really is really unconscionable to be creating fear, particularly among some of the older residents. Some of them are, you know, parents of friends of mine that I grew up with, and it is just so unfortunate to cause that level of fear. I think that there are many things in our world that are quite scary right now, and many things that we are facing in this country imminently that are indeed quite scary. I do not think that ADUs and subdivisions rise to that level, and I think, you know, let's keep things in perspective and keep things factual in terms of the history of the built environment in Princeton. All of that said, I want to thank the Iodellis for hanging in there and being so patient. It can't be easy to hear some of the things that you've heard, and I'm sorry if you don't. I hope you still feel welcome in your neighborhood. You're certainly welcome in our community, and what you've contributed is a model of inclusion, which is what we're striving for. We don't want to put a gate around our town and keep people out. And I think you are making it possible to create some dwellings, smaller dwellings that hopefully will create a small community with you on your property. It sounds, I'm optimistic that it will benefit you and your neighborhood. And I really, as some others have said before me, I'm so appreciative of everyone involved in this application, the attorney, the architect, the planners, for hanging in there, and most of all the applicants, and making so many revisions and being so conscientious in listening and responding to the feedback from this planning board, which is ideally how a process like this should work, that is interactive over quite a few years. And I would very much like to approve this application tonight. I think that we've tortured these applicants for long enough, and I would like to approve their application tonight.
Oh, thank you, Mia.
Well,
I do appreciate everything that you said, and I want to address one other thing that a couple of people brought up, and that is the notion that the map of the neighborhood with comparable lots highlighted was somehow, you know, an exercise in cherry picking the lots to compare to. And to me, it was just the opposite. It showed where lots that are comparably, you know, have comparable frontage or are comparably sized are located. It did not in any way hide the fact that the lots across the street are not like the lots on this side of the street. And so it just enabled the board to look at the sort of bigger picture, which I for one appreciated. And I just echoing some of what Mia said, the kinds of changes that this plan incorporates, the 36% maximum impervious cover, which is substantially lower than was earlier proposed, the 25% maximum FAR, again, substantially lower, is just really important. The flipping of the homes, even after the first concept reviews suggested we might want to see the smaller homes in front, and then it was like, oh no, maybe not, you know. Anyway, I too very much appreciate all the work that's gone into trying to be responsive. So are there other, I would invite now the board members to express your views about this, and then hopefully entertain a motion, and then go through conditions, of which there are would be several if there is a motion to approve. But first, I want to give folks a chance to express your opinions. Nat?
I just wanted to echo Mia's comments and say that I would also like to approve this tonight, and also hopefully before I have to get up for my 6 o'clock flight tomorrow morning.
Hopefully you're one of those people that can sleep on airplanes.
Hopefully.
Julie, Julie Capizzoli?
Um, yeah, I also have to get up at 6, before 6. Yeah, I think that the amount of control we have on this application gives us a huge amount of benefit compared to not having any control at all. And I think the ultimate result is a much better situation than if we had just left it with no application at all. So I support it.
Thank you. Paula Vinuka?
I want to thank the applicant for being so responsive to the board's comments and coming back with, I think it's what is a very fine design for the site. And as a member of the landscape subcommittee, I look forward to working with you on that plan as well. I also want to say, just looking at the lots and in that area and what's going on with housing development in that area, and how many of the smaller, older one-story houses are being placed, looking at what's replacing those houses as there's turnover. I think this is an excellent model for an alternative vision for how that whole neighborhood can develop in the coming generation.
Thank you, Paula V. David Cohen?
And this is a very anticlimactic comment, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about traffic. And want
Thank you,
people
yeah.
to think about their own driving habits. You know, we have out of our driveway 3, 4, 5 trips a day, not more than that. I mean, much less than once an hour. And so somebody did some math and was sort of suggesting there were all these opportunities for conflict with the added traffic, having these 4 units on the site. I really think it's still, you know, it might be 2 trips an hour, you know, instead of 1 trip every 2 hours. It's the traffic impact. If you really think about the way that you and your neighbors drive, will be undetectable. That's my feeling about traffic here.
Thank you. Other thoughts from board members? I just want to say I did find the planning testimony to be persuasive. The points that were made about the context, the fit of smaller structures as opposed to a very large structure, the permitted use of ADUs, the reduced impervious cover and responsible stormwater management. Again, I find persuasive. And so I just wanted to put that on the record. If there are no other comments, would someone like to make a motion? Ms. Sachs?
I would like to make a motion to approve, and I also just want to say, I thanked everybody, but not the engineer. Jim, thank you. You actually soldiered through 2 applications tonight. You were really quite a trooper. Thank you so much. Anyway, yes, motion to approve.
And is there a second? Seconded by Mr. O'Donnell. Mr. Mueller, let's go through conditions.
Okay. And if I may, could I ask Justin, there was a section in his memo and in prior memos about the sequencing of events. He was concerned about basically having a subdivision approved and even perfected while there was a house right in the middle of the lot line. And Justin's thinking, as I understand it, was, and it seems to me there was a real basis for it, is you should have the house demolished to start with, then have the subdivision would be at the point where it could be perfected, and go from there. But I note in their testimony, they talked about a basically not using that and basically perfecting the subdivision and only requiring demolition after one of the lots was built. Justin, do you want to comment on that?
That would not be
That
possible.
doesn't make sense. No, obviously the homeowners are living in this house, so we want to make sure they could continue to do that. I remember this coming up at the concept review, just to make sure there wasn't a case where they subdivided and then something happened and now you have two lots running through the middle of a house. So whether that's a note on the plat or something else, I was hoping the attorneys would know the answer to that one.
So if I could just the kind of the rub here is that not that we'll think it'll take this long, but this is a site plan approval and that's a 2-year time frame. And the time to perfect the subdivision is 185 days. And since these folks live there, the hope would be that we would be able to perfect the subdivision, but the condition of demolition would run with selling one of the units. So as long as they owned both of them commonly, they could live there and not have to demolish the house, but would have to demolish it before selling a lot independently of the other. That way they would have the time to put their financing together, and likely the terms of that could be confirmed, either a note on the deed as you suggested, Justin, or perhaps we have to do an easement agreement as well for the common driveway. That could be a function there. But the idea is to fix that gap between the 2 years for the site plan and the rather quick trip to the county clerk's office in 185 days to perfect.
Does that work for you, Mr. Muller?
Yeah, that works for me. And
Yeah,
Justin-
so you'll need to just pay attention to that particular, well, not that you don't pay attention to wording, but that's a sequencing issue that should obviously be reflected as a condition,
Right.
along with 36% maximum impervious coverage, the 25% maximum FAR, the review of the landscape subcommittee and landscape architect and municipal arborist. I'd like to also include a condition that the landscape plan should consist of all native species and include buffer and screening plantings as were shown in their concept. It's not a concept, it's a site plan, but it's subject to approval.
And Madam Chair, I don't know if this needs to go in the condition, but showing that ghost sidewalk.
Yes,
that would
yes.
recommend it.
Right.
And Justin, that's a reference to David's phantom sidewalk.
That's correct.
Yeah, I think that's fine. Okay.
So since it's a site plan approval too, there's no chance that the parking, which right now is behind the dwellings, would be moved to the front of the dwelling. My point is, does it make sense to have a condition that the parking be behind the main front dwelling, the way it's shown now on the plan?
I think would
Or
be
is that not necessary because we're approving the site plan?
right.
Okay, all right.
I think one of the conditions actually is that the site plan must be modified consistent with A3, which is what they showed us tonight.
Okay, right. And then there are a whole list of conditions in the supplemental engineering and zoning report on pages 2 and 3.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
You'll just include all of those. We don't need to
I don't think we have to go over
read them all out right now.
I don't think so. And then
Madam Chair, if I could just, and Mr. Mueller, there's one condition, I included staff comments from the previous staff report with that supplemental memo. The one staff comment that I did not carry over but was intended to be carried over was the comment regarding the construction cost estimate for the installation of site improvements for the purposes of performance bond and inspection guarantees, or inspection fees and performance bonds, excuse me.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, thanks, Dan.
Other conditions?
Just if you could bear with me, let me.
Yep.
Just looking at the, okay. Dan, Dobromelski, in terms of your report, which is June 12th, is there anything we have to add from that?
I think they mentioned the comment number 2 about just correcting the native species of the red maple, and comment number 3 was just if the rain gardens are still required, that should be included in the landscape plan.
That's great. And then we had a lengthy memo from the arborist dated March 5, 2024. Obviously, things have changed since then. It's very lengthy. I don't know that there's anything in there that we need to put in, especially because the landscape plan is now going to go to the landscape committee.
I just
Yes.
just the standard tree protection zone comments that you typically would have for the trees on the edges.
Yep.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, I'm glad you said that. And the condition to meet with landscape, or, to get approval from the landscape subcommittee should include not only Mr. Dobromilski, but also the municipal arborist at that meeting.
Okay.
Which is just a belt and suspenders approach.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the landscape plan should also be subject to their approval, I take it, right?
Yes.
Okay, I think that's it.
Okay, thank you. That was moved by Mia Sachs, seconded by Owen O'Donnell. Carrie, would you give us a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Badekeimer,
Yes.
Ms. Capizoli,
Yes.
Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Mr. McGowan,
Yes.
Ms. Nuka,
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell,
Yes.
Ms. Perlmutter,
Yes.
Ms. Sachs,
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Wait, one.
Jerry, did you?
Isn't that
Yes,
10
ma'am.
people?
I can't, 9 is my maximum. We
Right.
have 10 members. So
Right, but-
Claudia was not eligible.
Oh, you did not, I'm sorry, I thought you mentioned her.
No,
It's
did
fine,
not
thank
call on Claudia. Claudia Wilson Anderson is hanging in just to be a trooper.
Thank you,
Okay.
Claudia.
And both David Cohen
Um,
and Owen O'Donnell were eligible at the last meeting. They listened to the previous recordings,
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
or however it worked out. We've had.
Okay, well, thanks, everybody. I really, really appreciate how late you were willing to stay tonight. Thank you, Iodeles, for your forbearance as well, and for the many steps you took to address the board's and neighbors' comments and concerns. Really, really appreciate it. We meet again a week from tonight. See you then. David?
Move to adjourn.
Second. Aye. All in favor,
Aye.
please say aye.
Night.
Aye and goodbye. Good night.
Good night.
Have a good night.